First of all, my name is Larry Gibson. My vanning handle is Blue Cat. I was born in 1941, 3.5 weeks before the attack on Pearl Harbor. I graduated high school in 1959 in a class of 15, the last class to graduate from my school. I graduated college in 1964. 4 weeks later, I started an adventure with my wife that has now gone on for 61 years. Part of that adventure has been vanning, a big part. We started vanning in 1975 in Denver, Colorado with Rocky Mountain Vans of Denver. I want to stop right here and advise you, when I say something I think you should know about as a vanner, I'm going to do this. So when I say Rocky Mountain Vans of Denver and I do this, you need to know who they were. I was co-chair of security and parking for the 4th National Truck-In at Colorado Springs in 1976, the Breakaway National. The interesting part about that was I had never been to a truck-in before that. And here I was in charge of security for a van-in with thousands of vans. We're also former members of Experimental Vans of Houston. I am an original and former member of the National Truck-In Board. I'm former liaison for Rocky Mountain Vans of Denver to the Council of Councils. I'm a former contributor to Camel's National Van Poon magazine. And I'm the former chair of the board of directors for the Museum of Vanning and Hall of Fame nonprofit. I'm a former membership coordinator for the Museum of Vanning. And currently, I'm the financial coordinator for the Museum of Vanning and Hall of Fame. I didn't tell you all that to impress you or to bore you. I brought that up because everybody has a history. And the one thing I forgot to tell you was that Caitlin Clark grew up just down the road from where I live. Now we're going to talk about relevance. Everything I've told you so far is true. But the last statement may not be relevant to our conversation. And that's part of what history is all about, is what's relevant. I have a history, you have a history. Everything has a history, everybody has a history. You've heard the old saying, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. Well, that's more or less true, but that's the dark side. The brighter side is that if you do choose to study history, you might be able to repeat it or do even better, and you might be able to avoid what you don't want to repeat, but you might also decide what you want to celebrate. If you stop and think about it, most of the festivals and celebrations in the world are because of something in history. So if you understand history, you understand what to celebrate. Museums are a critical tool in studying history. They preserve history and they help us interpret it. We always hear from the New Agers that we should live for today. Well, that doesn't mean you can't celebrate the past. Who am I? I am my history. We are our history. Vanning has a rich and colorful history. Some of it we might not want to repeat. But how do we choose what to celebrate and what we would like to repeat, or at least do something like that again? Well, fortunately, we have a museum to help us make that decision. But how did we get a museum? It's a long and winding story, and it began with those crazy trading vanners. This is a shot of Coop, Poor Man, and Surfer Joe, or Trader Joe as I call him, at the 11th National Truck-In in 1983, trading collectibles. Take a look at that little suitcase at Joe's feet. It has a history. Where will we see it again? Look what these guys started. We went from that to Trader Joe's collection in his Detroit home to this, a first-class museum. How did we get a museum of vanning? Well, it's a long and winding road, as I said. We know that at the 10th and 11th National Truck-Ins, there were some conversations about what are we going to do with all this stuff? But nothing is documented. At the 36th National at Altamont, there was a group of vanners that got together to discuss things like a museum and a lot of other vanning topics. The general consensus was that vanning would not support a museum, but again, there's no documentation. There's lots of other stories and anecdotes, very little documentation, but we know that a lot of people were thinking about a museum. The Madonia collection and others grew as vanning boomed and then waned and matured. Vanners kept vanning, collectors kept collecting, and a lot of stuff ended up in attics, basements, and garages. But vanners kept collecting, as I said. Unfortunately, some of it ended up in the landfill and the burn barrel. That's gone. We can't do anything about that. But vanners kept on vanning and collectors kept on collecting. I'd like to get personal for a minute. I promise there is a connection. In 1987, Carolyn and I were living in Delaware, and I lost my career path to the combination of the corporate realignment and some personal decisions. And we ended up moving back to our home in Iowa. Our lives were so chaotic that sadly we did not connect with Iowa vanners. And by 1992, we had dropped out of vanning. The last event I attended at that time was the 20th National in Wisconsin. I'm going to back up the slide just for a minute. 19 years later, in 2011, I was surfing the internet and stumbled upon vannin.com, Astro's now famous pioneering website. I introduced myself and was warmly received. During the conversation, Bad Girl Susie and Virtual and some others said, there's a truck-in that's going to happen in your neighborhood in May, and we think you should go to it. Well, I talked it over with Carolyn, and we decided we would do that. Now keep in mind, we had never been to a Midwestern truck-in other than a national, even though we had moved back to the Midwest. So when we showed up to the gate at Colfax, Iowa, and there were less than 50 trucks there, all we could think of was the last local event we went to had 300 vans in Pennsylvania. What happened? I was ready to turn around and go home. Carolyn said, nope, you can't do that. We're going in. So we did, and it was a fantastic weekend of reconnection and connection. Names like Boob Fetish Dale, Judith Pylon, Don and Becky Noon were there. So when I raised my hand, that means that was important, at least to me. Gypsy and Louise, I'm sorry for the screen flipping, there's a setting that I got wrong. Gypsy and Louise were vanning stuff at that event, and I asked Al if he remembered a guy named Joe Madonia. And he said, sure, he moved to Florida, let's call him. So he whipped out his cell phone and called Joe, and Joe answered, and he was at the Beverly Beach truck-in in Florida. And Joe said, I said, Joe, do you remember me? I visited your home in Detroit in the late 80s to view your collection. And he said, sure, I remember you. I said, are you still collecting? He said, I sure am. You ought to come see my collection. Well, interestingly, the Council of Councils was held in February of 2012 in St. Petersburg, Florida. So we decided, since we were going to Florida that winter, to attend. It was another really emotional weekend of collecting. Names like Fast and Bulbous George, RV, come to mind. The highlight, or one of the highlights of the weekend, was a trip to Joe's house in nearby Hudson, Florida, to view his collection. I was blown away by the quality and the size of the collection, but it was obvious that Joe was running out of room. I asked him about that, and he said there's work underway to try and find a new home for the collection. And I said, if that really comes to bear, I'd like to be involved. Well, in 2013, I got a call from Joe asking me if I would be the head of the new nonprofit that was being formed to take over the collection, to manage it, and to care for it. And I said, sure, I'd like to be involved. It so happened that a vanner who had planned to retire in Florida had purchased the lot next to Joe and Bonnie, but had to change their plans. So the lot became available and arrangements were made to purchase it as a new home for the collection. A nonprofit was formed, and in 2014 came to a reality, and the collection was transferred from Joe's ownership to the nonprofit. And finally, funds were secured to build a building, and that was completed in 2015. The Florida National, I believe it's the 44th if I remember correct, was held nearby in 2016, and by then Joe's work in the museum was far enough along that he held a grand opening. And it's been almost a decade since then, and much progress has been made on the collection and on all the other attributes of the museum. Here are a few shots of the building process. As you can see, it was substantial. And it was made more substantial by the fact we had very few volunteers to follow up after the construction people were done. These are a couple of shots of the exterior of the building that are a few years old now, but they show you the extent to which it was completed. What is in the Museum of Vanning? Almost everything. You can read the list as well as I can recite it. If you're interested in anything in Vanning, it's probably going to be there, or Joe will know how to go after it. It has a gift shop. We have some documentation of the National Truck-In and NSVA, just anything you might be interested in. Here's a few photos of the museum. The van shop, which is probably the most popular display, recreates a 1970s van shop, complete with vintage inventory. The library is a good place to research old vanning magazines or anything else. The media room and lounge is a great place to watch old vanning movies, or just sit around and talk or listen to Joe tell stories. The celebration garden has just been remodeled and has over 100 commemorative bricks in it now, and room for hundreds more. Here's a nighttime shot of the covered patio, and a view of some of the jacket collection. The club jacket collection is very extensive and always brings about some good vanning memories. Thousands of toy vans. There's even a tribute to the most infamous trader of all, whale, IBOB PTA. And if you don't know IBOB PTA, find out. Here's a couple of the vans in our collection, which now number 7, Flying Eagle 2 and the Pearl van. And here's what we call the Stairway to Heaven, which is the stairway to the loft where the media room, library, and van shop are. And you can see that some clubs or former members of clubs have donated signs. The Vanner's Bar has an extensive collection of license plates and mugs and logoed cups. Here's a shot of the patio, which has become a really favorite gathering place for visiting banners. So we've come from a backroom novelty to a first-class museum. Here's the current organization: Board of Directors of the nonprofit, President and Chair Pro Tem Joe Madonia, Secretary Bonnie Madonia, Treasurer Lynn Harmonson, and Interim Director Kimberly Madonia. That's an inactive position, whereas if something happened to Joe, God forbid, Kimberly would step in and look after his interests. The Executive Committee is the board members, plus Susan Martin, who's Assistant Treasurer and Membership Manager, and myself, who's as Financial Coordinator. Bob Belinda is a Senior Advisor. Eric Walker is our General Advisor. Eric has some experience with niche museums. And Howard Furtak, who some of you might know, is our Fundraising Advisor. Our current staff is Joe as Director Curator, Purchasing and Bookkeeping is Bonnie Madonia, Treasurer again is Lynn Harmonson, Membership Management and Assistant Treasurer Susan Martin, Webmaster and Member Newsletter Editor Larry Gibson. So Vanny, you have a museum. Can you, will you keep it, is the question. Let's take a look at what it takes to keep the museum running. Our operating and non-profit expenses, licenses, fees, insurance, all of that kind of thing, keeping the air conditioning running, runs about $7,000 a year and is going up. Business and office expenses, what it takes to run the business end of a museum, is about $7,000 also, but that can vary a bit from year to year. Maintenance, repairs, a couple of grand. Logo merchandise, off which we do try to make money, a couple of grand. Museum supplies, the cost to do the Christmas party fundraiser, which is our big fundraiser. Membership patches, bricks, and so on. All adds up to about $36,000 a year. Where does the money come from? Well, we're still very dependent on our benefactors, and currently they're donating at least $8,000 a year. Membership fees are bringing in about $6,000. We've made some changes that we hope will make that better. Christmas party fundraiser grosses about $7,000, so we net about $3,500 on that. We've lost our venue for the spring van show, and we haven't found another one, but to be honest, that was more a publicity event than a fundraiser. We didn't make much money off of that. National truck-in booth sales and museum gift shop revenue about $8,000, and the brick program and the Ring of Honor bring in about $1,000. Other donations, cash jar, all this other stuff where people will give us money, additional money from memberships and so on, is about $5,000. That adds up to about $3,500 a year. So we're short $1,000. Some years we might not be, some years that might be more. The point is, though, that we are just barely in balance, and when we're short, we have to either beg our benefactors for more money or cut back on maintenance or something else like that. So what's next? Now what do? We need sustainability. We need to be able to pay the bills long term. A critical tool in that is our endowment fund, which was set up by our benefactors as an investment fund that hopefully will eventually spin off enough money to pay for our normal operating expenses. It's managed by a very talented broker, conservatively, and we're approaching the point where we think that it's going to be able to start generating some revenue that we can draw off. It's about $120,000 right now, and it will grow, but this is not a cash cow. This is something that grows very conservatively and very slowly. We need more investment into the fund to be able to cover inflation and hopefully start giving some salaries to some staff. We also need investment to cover major expenses and emergencies, and we can get into more of that later. We have also put together funds for other purposes, which Joe will talk about more later. Our adopted van program, a storage fund, and a moving fund. Storage has been a critical problem for us, but we've got at least an interim solution now that came about very nicely. We have another question that really bothers us, and that is when to stop putting money into the current location. We don't want to leave the current location, but as we grow, we will eventually have to. There is no room for expansion. So we need more donations, obviously, and we've talked about the targeted fund drives. One of our biggest challenges and biggest hopes, but unfortunately one of our biggest disappointments, is corporate sponsorship. When we checked the zoning laws, we found we could have a business and build a building in this low density residential neighborhood. What we didn't know was how many rules there were. There can be no outside advertising, no outside storage, and no public gatherings. When we went to hold our first event at the museum, we were advertising it online. And the county said, no, that's a public event. You're going to have a permit, and we don't know if we'll give you one or not. So we had to quit advertising it online. Now, the more paranoid among you may wonder, how did they know about this when you're advertising it on a niche website? Anyway, we have had to move our fundraising event to another location, as most of you probably know. We are attempting to do some targeted corporate sponsoring, but one of our other limitations or challenges is most of us are getting so old we're losing our contacts in the former businesses and corporations where we might have been able to make some headway. So we need room to grow and we need room to advertise. We will still take historical donations even though we have limited storage. We can't turn them down. We would like to have more displays, but as I said, we are beginning to run out of room. More storage I've already talked about, and Joe will talk about more too. And we'd like to have more programs, but we have such limited staff that we have a challenge. Let me give you an example of staffing challenges. These are the 14 steps it takes to place surplus donated items on the online gift shop. We have a policy, if we have duplicate donations, we can sell the duplicates to raise funds. But somebody has to go through these 14 steps to get there. We'd like to have more displays. We've been told we ought to expand our board of directors to get more managerial talent. Well, that sounds great, but what we really need is more volunteers, not more managers. We do need more advisors and collaborators, and that's why we brought Bob and Howard and the other gentleman on board. We'd also like to have more salary for curator and staff, but we're just not there yet. Things we'd like to do. Well, of course, corporate sponsorship I've already talked about. Grant applications. If anybody knows anybody in Vanning who's done grant applications, we'd certainly like to talk about them being a volunteer. We need more. We'd like to have more displays and tell more stories. We'd like to have more vans donated, but we don't have the room or the money at this point to maintain them. We'd like to do a complete history on the national and 2% story. We'd like to have an apprentice. We'd like to have a traveling museum. We'd like to expand the museum website, but there's only one of me. We'd like to hold more events, and we'd like to have permanent paid staff. All of that takes money. How can you help? Donate, donate, donate. You can donate money by check, money order, credit card, or PayPal on the website or in person or by mail. You can donate property or assets to the endowment fund, and there might be certain tax advantages for some individuals if they do that. Donate your time, volunteer in person or remotely. We know not everybody lives in Florida, but there are ways to volunteer without being there. Volunteer at events, like the booth at the National that works Susie to death. If you'd like to help out there, it'd be much appreciated. Form an auxiliary, regional help, to pass out flyers, membership forms, things like that at local van events. Visit the museum and learn more. Go down and see what's happening there. Donate your talent. What gets you off? What turns you on? What do you like to do? Do you have some time? Think about it. What's your career background? Maybe you have some experience we could use. And what are your interests? We all know you're interested in vanning, but are there side lights that might help? What gets you off, as I said, and what turns you on? There are other ways to support the museum. Whatever. We still will take, as I said, historical donations. Even though we have a storage issue, we can't turn them down. And the excess can be sold to raise funds. Check in online and see what's needed at the museum website. We have nonprofit information, the story of how vanning came to be, so on and so forth. Two of my favorite things on the website, and it's because of the way I think, are Fallen Flags and the Vanner Memorial. Fallen Flags is a working list of defunct van clubs, vanning organizations, councils, and so on that we try to keep up to date and improve in accuracy. The Vanner Memorial is a digital form of those big old books that used to be carried around to events that memorialized individual vanners. There's a way to contact the museum online. There's a director's blog where Joe sounds off every once in a while, and upcoming museum events. We also, and Lex, do I have your permission? Is she still here? Lex Linton. Not here, you have her permission. Yeah, I have her permission. Lex Linton has agreed to become our media coordinator. And we know that that's going to make a difference, because I do a lot of Facebook, but I wouldn't know Instagram if it hit me in the face. So we're glad to have her on board. Look what those crazy trading banners started. And look where that little suitcase ended up, welcoming everybody to the museum. So we've come full circle, and you can help keep the circle unbroken. It's Vanning Museum. You can help us keep it. You can keep on vanning. Thank you.
I'd like to first thank everybody for coming in to listen to all this, because I honestly didn't know if anybody would even care. But I have to tell you that I am always overwhelmed and humbled when we finally get a pat or two on the back about what we're doing, because it does mean a lot to me. It didn't start out really to be this much 50 years ago, but it has come along so far that it's just overwhelming. So, and honestly, it wouldn't happen without all of you guys, that come and support the museum and all the stuff you do in our programs and all that. So all I can say is thank you, and come see it. That's my biggest thing. Our Christmas party's coming up in December 11th through the 14th. It's our 10th year already. I have the hardest time believing that we've been doing that party for 10 years. It's going to be a really good time. We have 3 bands. It's like $30 and you get 3 bands, 3 meals. It's at an outdoor sort of hotel with a balcony rooms, and the pool's down in the middle, and it's all covered in palm trees. And we like to call this place banner friendly. It's not a 5-star hotel, but we can have our tiki bar outside and drink all day and night. We can have our band playing outside by the pool. We have bands that play inside, and we get away with a lot that most hotels would not let us do. So we like to think that it's a pretty good bang for your buck to come and spend time with us. If you want to camp out at the museum, you can do that too. If you don't want to stay at the hotel, they don't even care if we camp out in your van in the hotel parking lot. The hotel is maybe 3 miles from the museum. Everything's real convenient. Lots of stuff to do around there. The beach is a mile away. We have a pub crawl on Thursday where we go to 3 or 4 beach bars, which are really cool, and we end at a place called In on the Gulf, and we have lunch there right on the water. It's a beautiful location. We have a great time out on the patio there. And Friday we have a pizza party, which is included in your entry fee. It's all the pizza you can eat Friday night. Saturday the tiki bar is open from like 1 to 5 until we run out, but we've never run out. So we have a steel drum band that plays once you get a taste of Florida. We have a little steel drum band that plays right by the pool, by the tiki bar. And then Saturday night we have a bring a dish for dinner, and we supply like 3 different kinds of meat. And you guys just bring a side dish, and we have a big old feast on Saturday night. Dress up contests, come as your best dress, Christmas, ugly sweater, all that kind of fun stuff. So we really hope you guys can make it. The hotel is taking reservations. It's ready. It's set up. I got flyers over in the museum booth. See Susie over there. We got them there. Hopefully, if you have any questions about it, just let me know. Only other thing about that is last year, because of the hurricanes, we had a lot of tough people displaced out of their homes. And so they had no place to stay, and a lot of these hotels just put up people for months. We lost like 80 rooms in our hotel, and it really kind of put a kibosh on our party. We tried to send people to different hotels, but I know how it's like. You party all day, you don't want to drive down the street or walk across the street to another hotel. So I've already got rooms blocked. If Hurricane Who Cares comes this year, it's ours. So, but I wouldn't hold me to that either. As far as other stuff goes, one of the things that we talk about, I've been doing these fundraisers and selling raffle tickets and car washes since I went to my first van event, joined my first van club. And money has always been, it's been taboo with vanners. It really has. Let's make enough money so we can put the thing on next year. And I've always sort of thought outside that box, because it takes so much more than just enough money to put on a good event. We always have to, I've always thought of a way to bank money. We do it on the Nat Sports so we can help out next year, so the event can be better, so the toilets can be better, and the bands can be better. And we're just trying to do the same thing with the museum. We don't want to just survive and have this be something that's just going to chug along. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in, and these things cost money. Everything does. And we turn everything back into the museum. Every dime that we take in, the hours that we spend over in the booth that Susie has, and the donations that Howard has donated, literally his entire collection to the museum, and Doc from Nebraska, and Brian Bowie just passed away. These collections are helping us raise this money, albeit $20 or $30 at a time, but it's keeping us sustained. I know it's hard to listen to talk about some of the numbers that Larry was throwing out at you, but these are reality numbers, people. We want to expand the building. It's not $500 shed from Home Depot. It's an $80,000 building. It's the electric bill that keeps going up every month. It's a lot. Sorry, it sounds like a complaint, but these are the things that Larry is trying to advise us on, because I didn't have a clue all these years. I just wanted to go out there and play with my toys. Larry is telling me it takes a little more. So we did just acquire a container. We bought a 40-foot shipping container. The donations have been coming in, And the museum was just filling up in all the wrong places, and I ran out of room to build some new displays, so we started looking around. Actually, when Scotty and Amy were down, she got on the computer and found us a place down in Tampa, these containers that have been to China back and forth, 30 times. And so Scotty was down and helped us out getting it back to the house and setting it up and putting electricity in it. That's Scotty right there, by the way. He's been probably our biggest contributor. Scotty has given us more time and effort than anybody there is in Vanning. He has wired it. He's given us plumbing and construction. There isn't much this guy doesn't know how to do. Believe me, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are without his volunteer work. You take $75 or $100 an hour times the time he's put in that place, and we'd be chasing our tails. So we got this container. We got some electricity in it. We start a little extra money here and there, and we built some shelves and bought some shelves. And so now we got a place to put that stuff and organize it and separate it. So if we want to bring stuff here or have a swap meet at the museum or whatever, or if you might be looking for something in particular, at least it's getting a little more organized, and it's giving us some more room in the main building. It's uglier than heck right now. It needs a paint job. But I did one of those snow roofs on top to insulate the roof, and we put a big entry door on the side, and so it won't look so bad in the backyard anyway. But we're not turning down those donations. I can't say no to anybody. Somebody comes up to me with something that's meant something to them for the longest time. I can't turn them down. I want to make it happen for as many of you that want to give. So I had a pretty emotional thing yesterday with Henry. You probably can't hear a word I'm saying, but I got his first club jacket yesterday, and he was pretty emotional about donating it. So, okay, upstairs in the museum, which is, I don't really call it a loft. It's our upstairs. It's our second floor. We have 12 steps to get up there, and we had done a fundraising program, which was our very first one, to put signs on the steps of each one going up. We didn't realize it at the time, but we were doing a 12-step program. Of course, we could figure Vanners could relate to that. And it was a very successful, absolutely positive program. And we thought we would just keep trying more of those to see what we could do. We haven't matched that one as of yet, but our second floor is kind of my fun place now. We've got this movie theater, and the library is where we really, really need help. We have thousands of pieces of literature now. Magazines and books and paper and manuals, and that all need to be sorted and put into plastic sleeves and put into albums. I can't preserve it forever if we don't take care of it. And putting in the split air conditioner upstairs is helping it that way. But man, we still need to look for the first piece, find it in an album if we have it, and then somehow get it into the gift shop so then we can start selling off the extra stuff for people that are looking for their original pieces of literature or repair manuals or magazines, stuff like that. We really need people just to sit down and spend the time stuffing these things in plastic sleeves. The van shop, this is my favorite area in the whole museum. I spend more time in it than anything. I finally found the tube grill I was looking for in the swap meet this weekend to hang on the wall because I had the headlights trimmed to go by it. I bought another set of portholes this weekend from Eric from New York, and we love portholes that go on the wall. We try to keep everything in there period correct, 70s and early 80s. Please don't ask me how much the set of portholes are when you walk in that room, because it's only for display. I get that more than anything. So that covers about everything upstairs. Larry, we talked about the expansion in another building. I'm comfortable where we are, I really am. But I want to make sure that this place does progress and change. So you might want to come back next year or the year after, or have a place to put your jacket the next time it comes in. We have about 125 jackets on display now. Jackets and banners are the hardest thing for anybody to part with. They're their colors, their most personal treasures. And I realize that when they come, so I don't want to just throw them in a box to never be seen again. But when you deliver or donate a jacket, we got to put it on a mannequin. We've got to display it. I don't want to just hang it on a metal hook and throw it on the wall. Everything is being displayed perfectly and professionally. those mannequins, you know, they cost money. I got lucky in a place that buys out old businesses. They buy their display cases and mannequins and hooks and grid work and all that. I got a lot of what's called a torso mannequin. It's like, you know, just from here up. Well, I've gone through 80 or 90 of those, and now I've run out. Now I need more. So we had an interesting thing happen about a month ago. Tom Cincinnati from the East Coast wanted to donate a hat that he had been wearing since 1975. It's this beer can, where he cut up a beer can, and they used to do crochet or macrame, I guess it's called, to hold it together. And he'd been wearing that hat since the 70s. And he called me up and literally in tears, Joe, I want to donate this hat to the museum, but you got to tell me you're going to take care of it. I've had this hat forever. So-and-so gave it to me and made it and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, Tom, I'll do the best I can, but you know, I need a place to put it. Well, what do you need to do? I said, well, I need a mannequin. I need a head to put it on. So he says, well, how much is a mannequin? So I went online. I said, well, I can't find any used ones, but I found one online. And I told him, and he says, I'm going to mail you a check next week. So we did. And then, of course, the hat's got a naked mannequin. So now I got to put pants on it. I can put a jacket on it. I got to put socks on it. I got to put shoes on it. And I had a great set of Coca-Cola pants I got at Van Canada in 1977. I put those on there. Those came in the goodie bag. And Lou Greger, who has passed away last year, my wife had made him a really cool long tailcoat that was all flamed and patches on it. So I hung that on him. And I found an old Van News magazine t-shirt from 1974. So there's quite an array of stuff on this mannequin. And we got the idea of, what about sponsoring a mannequin? What about the same way we do our brick paver program or the palm trees, which I'll address in a sec with you. You know, would people be interested in donating their jackets or their colors or something special to put on? And I've got room to stand mannequins up in the corners. I can tell you when RV went in there the first time, we call him Young Harvey, he was our first one a couple years ago, he scared the living bejeebies out of me every time I walked in the freaking door. Because I could just see his shadow over there when I walked in. I thought somebody for sure was standing in the museum.
And he looks like a Young Harvey.
It is Young Harvey. So, but now we have Natalie's in there, and now we have Shoeless Tom, because that's our new one. And he's shoeless because I had a set of Van shoes, but they're only 7s, and I think the mannequin's got like a size 12 feet. So I mean, it's not pretty when you see me dressing and undressing mannequins, believe me. So somebody said just to cut his toes off, but I'm not going to do it. So that's another, you know, one of the programs we're talking about. What was your question about the palm trees?
He just wants to know about the program.
Oh, well, it's just one of our other fundraiser issues. It's like, I got a price on how much palm trees cost. I love palm trees. If I don't have a palm tree, I might as well live in Minnesota. Ohio. Yeah. So I love palm trees. I pull everything else out and just plant palm trees. I got a price on palm trees. We came up with a workable price for us for you to sponsor palm trees. They just look good in the yard. And then we give you a plaque that Bobby Belinda arranges to get made for us, that come out of a fellow in Louisville, Kentucky makes. And you can have your name and everything on a plaque and just put it at the base. Oh, I hate that. At the base of the tree. And we're just going to put these, right now we've got 10 of them. We got 6 in the back and 4 in the front. And they just look good around the museum. I really, really like them. And I think it's $600 to sponsor a tree. And you know, the stuff that we do, like the display cases, this is forever. We never set up you owe us $600 again next month. I don't want to be bothered with that. We do a one-time donation. If you want to sponsor it, then you know, we'll set you up and get you going with that. Anybody else even has any other ideas or thoughts on those things, we'd be happy to, you know, to try some new ones. So our adopt a van thing, we have 7 vans, like you said, attached to the museum. 2 of them really, really need some work, and we can't really bring them inside until they're ready to be presented. So we started a general fund. You can donate directly to a specific van to see the money go to that, or you can put it into a regular fund. It's little stuff. The Pearl needs a battery. It hasn't been started in quite some time. the Eagle was sitting in the building, and the right front tire just exploded for some reason. Not even driving it. Set of tires is $1,100. You know, that's just not easy money. So it's stuff like that you can help us keep them going. Lynn Harmonson donated a bunch of jumper boxes, which are really cool, trickle chargers. And so we keep those on the vans now to make sure that they start when we want to move them or take them to a show or bring them out for the Christmas party. I guess volunteers are the biggest thing, you know, that we're looking for. You know, we've got, other than a sewer hookup, we've got a lot of 30 amp hookups in the backyard. We've got a full working bathroom and shower. I got water spigots out there. If you're gonna come to Florida and spend a month spending $1,000 a month to stay in a campground, come by and stay in the museum for a week or a few days, and you know, sit in the gift shop and help us sell some items or paint something upstairs or move some stuff around. That's the kind of stuff I really need. I have a hard time carrying 4x8 sheets of plywood upstairs. It's just a second set of hands sometimes is really good, you know, and I can hook you up with anything you need out in the backyard. We're close enough to restaurants and everything else to do around there. Sometimes that might be all it takes, and if you're going to come to Florida or you want to go see Mickey Mouse or whatever, you know, come by and spend a week with us and park in the backyard. So, oh my goodness, what else have I got on here? I guess questions. You know, this whole thing that Larry went through, this whole presentation, is because we really needed to address transparency. People have been asking us about, you know, who's going to take over the museum when Joe's dead? Who's going to follow the money trail? Who's accountable for the money that comes in? These are the kind of things that Susie and Larry have been working on meticulously, so that if somebody from the government did walk in the door, we could prove to them at any time that our nonprofit is legitimate, that our incorporation is legit. All that paperwork is now displayed on the wall in the gift shop. The exit signs are in the right place. The aisles are 4 foot wide. The incorporation or the solicitation paperwork. Man, you wouldn't believe what all this takes. Those two have been just tirelessly working to keep all of us legal and so that we can carry this thing on. Transparency has been the key word since the 50th Nationals. Please, if you have a question, ask me. I don't want to hear through somebody else that Joe lives in, you know, Tahiti over the money that comes in through that building, or that my custom van is sitting out there on Vendors Row. I have nothing but vanning in my heart since the day I was 15 years old. That van is everything that I do that has nothing to do with the museum. I gave my entire collection to the museum. The Royal Coach that sits in there, I did not. That van is mine. It is on loan to the museum. The yellow van is all Bonnie and I. I want to be able to van and be out amongst everybody the same way that you guys do. I want to be on the show and shine field. I want to participate like you do. So, any question, anything, there's nothing that is out of order here that you might have about finances or the property. I do own the property. I lease it to the museum for $1 a year. I do that because in Florida we have a tax exempt thing that I can only do it with, what's that called again? The property, I forget what you call that.
Homeowners.
Yeah, homestead, that's the word I'm looking for, thank you. You can only homestead one piece of property in Florida. It's to keep basically the vagrants and everybody else from owning all this property and not paying their taxes to Florida. So I homesteaded I combined the lots, and so that we wouldn't have to pay taxes on that piece of property. So I leased that property to the museum for $1 a year. That way the museum doesn't cost them anything. So yes, I do own the museum. I do own the land underneath the museum. The building is in the museum's name. So all the vans that have been donated are titled through the Museum of Vanning and the nonprofit. Anything else? Anything, guys? Come on. Ask me the question that's what's been bugging you the most.
Were you comfortable in that total last night?
How many women hit on you last night?
Say again.
You said anything.
I guess I meant a little more museum related. One girl did tell me, she says there's something about a guy in a toga outfit, but
Something we don't want to know about.
maybe so, yeah, I don't know. But, like I said, we want you guys to feel comfortable with what we're doing. We want you to be involved and come and see it and talk positive about it. So if you ever hear that conversation in a campsite that says, them guys are doing this or them guys, put them straight, tell them straight. I've been vanning all of my life. All of my life. I've given it all to vanning since I was 15 years old. And there's nothing to hide about me. I want all of you people to be happy with it. I walk in the museum, yeah, I saw it yesterday. It's all about tomorrow now, all of that. We don't have a particular body in mind to who's going to be the curator or who's going to take this place over. But if you had those suggestions or those ideas, who might be, second generation, third generation, I'm open to hear about it. I'm hoping, to take a protege under my arm and teach them and tell them the stories and so this does carry on. But right now, it's all about making it the best, most fun possible place I can do today. Okay, Steve?
Can I ask people how many people here have been to the museum?
Steve wants to know how many of you have been to the museum.
I can tell you, I never went to this museum. I went to the preschool from Orlando, Fanning. I ran into Joe. I never met him before. He said, come by my house and check out this place. And it's well worth the trip. Absolutely well worth the trip. So
That looked like about half of you in here.
Fanning, if you haven't been there, you need to go there.
And then keep coming back.
We have that old video on Tuesday. Give them
I tell them, I love you, buddy, but we can't look at that video anymore. It's 8 years old. Yeah, so we need to work on that.
We're gonna make a new one.
So, yeah, we need to work on that for sure. I have a great, the whole point a lot of times, because I take everybody through the tours. It's not self-guided, there's no video screens. I take everybody through. And sometimes it can last an hour, sometimes it can go 3, depending on the questions and how many stories I decide to tell. And one of the good ones I tell is about that video, and I'm not going to do it now. If you want to hear it, I'll tell you. But everything is like a domino effect. You tell one story and it ends here, and that just goes into another story. And with us vanning from all over the country and literally the world, we could van in our little circle, go trucking in our little circle, and those circles may have never entwined, and somebody is, am I keeping you up or what? I guess if I don't get any questions, does that mean I've covered everything pretty well?
Anybody have any questions at all?